Glad you could make it in to Traveling the Journey Together, which today is featuring Leann Dale of Senior Placement Options.
Senior Living Options.
Senior Living Options of the Desert. We're so happy to have her here. I know I get calls quite often looking for resources for this, and I always give them Leann's name. And we have there's a couple of other agencies working in the desert, but these are wonderful, loving people who will work with you and find you the best option. And she's going to talk about those different options now. We'll have one more of our Traveling the Journey Together series this summer in person in July with Amanda Nera. She's a music therapist, and she's going to be talking about how music helps your cognitive process and memory. Obviously, we know it does so much for us. So keep a lookout for our emails. She'll be here with us in July. And then online in July, we'll have Valerie Suriel. She does an online meditative journey. And that's going to be via Zoom. So you'll do that from your home. It comes with a whole little kit of props and gifts that she puts together for you. And you can sign up for both of those through me. But if you're not getting our newsletter, let me know, because Pam, she puts all that stuff in the newsletter and then sends out more reminders. That's Pam back there. Does all our newsletter and our flyers and our reminders. And then in the fall, hopefully we'll start back with our traditional Traveling the Journey Together program, which for those of you, we've got two couples here that we got, or a single and a couple that went through it originally. But this is an 8-week program for you and your partner, your loved one, to come once a week on Fridays and have an instructional session with someone like Leann, and then we'll break into 2 groups, a support group for the caregivers and an activity group for the loved ones. And that should be starting up in November, so we will keep you abreast of that, and would love to have you join us for that. It's a great program. But without further ado, actually, I think, okay, we have one more family coming in, so if Leann doesn't mind just waiting a moment. Okay, we'll get them settled. Does everybody have their coffee, tea? I'm sure Mary Lou's taking care of everybody, so okay. So we're going to get them settled, and then we will get started. And Leann will tell you a little bit about herself, and then we'll definitely have question and answers and things like that. And without further ado, welcome to Leann Dale.
From the official. Tell you what,
Thank you, Priscilla. Thank you, everyone, for letting me have the opportunity to come and talk to you this morning. I have not done an in-person talk to anyone for at least a year. I've done a few on Zoom, so I have that familiarity, but it's nice to be able to be in person and actually see people and see their faces and be able to, have a little more interaction. Zoom is hard to do that with, as you all know, I'm sure. So, like Priscilla said, I'm Leann Dale. I'm the owner of Senior Living Options of the Desert, and we are a company that has been established 12 years ago here in the Valley, local. And we're what they call a placement company, but I really hate to refer to it as that. What I try to do is help people maneuver through the maze of what to do if living at home with your loved one without help is no longer an option anymore. And I know that through our lives, none of us expect that we're going to be in that situation. We don't want to really even think about it most of the time, but as we get older, we realize that it's probably a good idea to have a plan in place just in case something comes down, your life where you have to make these kinds of decisions. The best way to make that kind of a plan is to know what your options are. And so I'm hoping today I'll be able to give you just kind of in a nutshell what the options are, what's available, and what things that you might consider as you go through the journey with your loved ones. So the first thing is that most people like to stay home. They want to stay home. They don't want to leave. They want to be able to, kind of keep things as normal as possible when they're taking care of their loved ones. That is probably what my first choice would be too, if and when I get to that point in my life. So staying at home, what that really means, though, is it's going to be very hard on the person that's the caregiver, as you all know. I don't have to tell you that. But being able to have somebody come in and help you with some of the tasks, the daily tasks, give you an opportunity to have the abilities to go out, maybe do some things for yourself, get your hair cut, get your nails done, play golf, go to the grocery store, your own doctor's appointments, those kinds of things. Those are important to keep you healthy. And so I am a firm believer that in-home care companies are very, very helpful in regards to that. In-home care is a nice stopgap to be able to kind of get you to the next level of being able to manage the things. All the balls need to stay in the air, and to be able to do that, you need to have someone come in and help do the things that they're skilled at doing so that you can do your other things, obviously. So we have a lot of good companies out here in the Valley. Obviously, Dom is involved in one of them. And I definitely refer to Dom's company. I think, though, and this goes back to the day when I was a financial advisor and I was mandated to give someone 2 or 3 options of places to interview and make your own decision about whether or not that was going to be a good choice. So I always try to help people in regards to giving you good options and finding a good in-home care company, interview them, feel warm and fuzzy about what you see, what they tell you. Pricing, I might be a little bit out of touch on pricing, but from what I understand, they start somewhere around $25 an hour and go up from there based on the kind of care that is provided. That is something that is not my forte, certainly, but I always want to try to give somebody that option if I don't feel that placement is right yet. It's not all about moving somebody out of the house and moving them into an assisted living community at all. So the other then, if in fact using somebody to come into the house is not working, if you can't afford as many hours as are needed, the next option would be to move somebody into an assisted living community. Having your loved one live someplace where they are taking care of everything 24/7. So when I say assisted living, that's the category of how they're licensed. And I know that we're all probably talking about an assisted living that has memory care. We have one community out here that is willing to have someone with an actual dementia diagnosis live in assisted living if, in fact, they are not a wander risk, they're not combative, they can interact with people and are able to live fairly high functioning in assisted living. So that means they're not in a locked situation, they're not in a secured environment. There's only one company out here that is willing to do that. And of course, they want to be sure that they're not risking somebody's safety, so they want to do a big assessment to make sure that they're making a good decision letting that person be there. We have 15 assisted living communities in our valley, from La Quinta all the way up to Palm Springs. And of those 15, we only have 10 that can manage memory care. And those would be ones that have a secured environment, people refer to it as a lockdown, but the person can't come and go at their will. They have to be escorted by a responsible party out of the community. But those communities out here are very, very good in helping someone be able to live a fairly normal functioning life, even though they have some memory impairment. And so what I like to do when I'm helping a family through that, because that is what I do, is I want to be sure I know what their care needs are, what are their likes and dislikes, do they have hobbies, are there things that are, make them happy, where does the loved one live, so that we can kind of make sure that you're not too far away from where your loved one's going to be. What's your budget? Those are important too. And in some cases, it's not doable. And in some cases, certainly it is. But I want to be able to be sure that I help people not just willy-nilly go out there and, find out that they can't afford the place. That's very disappointing, number one. And it's a waste of your time. So I try to hone in on what's our rules of the game, so to speak, so that I can make sure that everybody has the kind of options that you need. So that is probably the first step down from going into having in-home care come into your home. Another option, though, is, let me back up. Pricing-wise on the assisted living communities with memory care usually starts out right around $4,500 a month. And some of our communities out here will kind of package it so that some of your care needs are included in that price. But for the most part, if there are other care needs, the price goes up. And so those are things we all need to be aware of when we go look at these communities, just to be sure that there's no surprises, because we all have a budget we have to work with. So then now the next step down is a board and care home. And I don't know if you've heard of board and care homes, but they're private residences. They're licensed by the state of California to provide the same kind of care as the big place does, but on a much smaller scale. And they are, we have 100 of them here in our valley, all licensed. I wouldn't say 100 are ones, all of them are not ones we want to use. There's a lot of them that are kind of crummy. And my job would be to help make sure that we don't pick ones that are crummy. And there's a licensing board that governs them, and I go on the website and make sure that they are all doing the jobs they're supposed to be doing, that they're saying they're doing. In doing this for 12 years, I will say I've placed a lot of people. So I have a lot of familiarity with all of the homes out here. And I know which ones to avoid, and I know which ones have a forte, which ones are not very good with night care. That's just part of what I think is offering good service to people. And so board and care homes usually can take up to 6 people. They have caregivers there 24/7. They basically mirror what you're doing at home, but your loved one lives there. You can go visit them, you can take them out, you can go out to lunch, you can do all those things. Now that COVID has kind of died its little self down, there's a lot of freedoms, but they are responsible for taking care of your loved one 24/7. And so those run, usually they can start out for a shared room, can start out around $3,200, maybe a little bit less. Sometimes I can find it for a little less. That's all inclusive. You don't have to worry about the pricing going up. Unless condition changes dramatically, where someone becomes combative, or they're bedbound, they need to be fed by hand, those kinds of things, sometimes there could be a bit of an increase. But for the most part, that is what you're going to stick with, is that price. For a private room, it's going to run closer to $4,000 a month. But all those same criteria will hold the same. We have them from, I've worked with ones out in Banning and Beaumont, all the way out to Indio, up in the high desert. We have a few up there, not much, but a few. And then a lot are concentrated here in our lower valley. So that's an option. I recommend a board and care home for people who are not very much into activity. They're pretty sedate. There's not, things going on like in the large communities where they have bingo and, all kinds of exercises and things like that. They just don't do that in a board and care home. But it is a good option if your budget is a little less, and or your caregiver or your loved one is not going to participate in activities. I wouldn't spend the extra money on it to go to a large community. So that pretty much covers all of the category of assisted living. And then one of the other options that some people ask me about, but in my mind really isn't much of an option, is a skilled nursing facility. And we have, maybe about 8 skilled nursing facilities out here in the valley. That would be like a Manor Care, Rancho Mirage Terrace. Those are all in a different category than assisted living. Those are specifically designed for rehab. So when I say rehab, it'd be like if you went to the hospital because you had pneumonia, you broke your hip, you had something happen to you that you need to have some time to get physical therapy, occupational therapy, and just some time to kind of get yourself back together before you can go home. That's what those places are designed for. So Medicare picks up the tab on that for that short-term stay that you're there for your physical therapy or whatever you're getting. Usually it's a couple of weeks. It's not designed to live at. But that being said, if you have the need to be in a skilled nursing facility on a long-term stay, you could live there and pay privately. And we're talking about $350 a day and up. Very expensive. And the other option would be you could live there on a long-term stay if you have Medi-Cal and you need a long-term bed. So those are hard to come by. They don't have that many of those beds designated in each one of these skilled nursing facilities. But it is a possibility. So it's somebody who either has a lot of money or not very much money, really, is kind of the name of the game there. In our valley, we do not have any skilled nursing facilities that have dementia skills. There are none with lockdown, and there are really not many that can handle anybody who has dementia behaviors, which is sad. So what that means is that we would have to kind of tiptoe out of the valley into Banning, Beaumont, or up in the high desert to Yucca Valley. It's very sad. But it is what it is. We don't have really much else to choose from here. So if anybody ever thinks I need a lot of help, skilled nursing is really, really not it. A board and care home can manage pretty much anything and everything. Shy of injections or a feeding tube, or if you have a wound that is past a certain stage, they can handle everything else, which is, covers most situations. So I went over how much they cost. The ways to pay for these places would be for in-home care, assisted living, and board and care. Those are what they call private pay. Money out of your own pocket to pay the bill. But if you have long-term care insurance, then some long-term care policies will cover those expenses for those three categories. Otherwise, you pay out of your own personal funds, because these are not, the government is not involved in any of these situations, and they don't have ways to pay for it.
Repeat the three. In-home assisted.
In-home care, assisted living, or board and care homes. Those are all private pay. So if you have long-term care insurance, then definitely that is a good option to be able to pick up most of the costs on these. I used to sell long-term care insurance when I was a financial advisor, and I didn't sell many policies. That was back, almost 15 years ago. And the people I run into now that are needing to use long-term care, I haven't run into very many people that have it either. So it just isn't something that is out there.
Leann, could you kind of generally describe what would be considered included care
Sure.
versus extended care?
Yes. So if you were going to move your loved one into an assisted living community with memory care, what you're usually going to entail is they're going to get a certain amount of help under the category of rent. And aside from rent is care costs. So rent would include your apartment, all your meals, all your utilities, if you're getting cable or any of those kinds of things in your little apartment, activities, the transportation to doctor's appointments. That's pretty much standard in all of the communities. That's what you get for your rent cost. If you need help with medication management, and everybody in memory care does, so you don't want to rely on somebody taking their own medications. That's just not smart. So medication management, showering help, toileting help, escorting help, which would be, putting you in a wheelchair and taking you to the dining room or wherever else. Night care, incontinence, any of those kind of things would be what they consider care costs. And of course, there's a dollar amount associated with each one of those and how much time do they take for each. And it's up to the assisted living community to determine those numbers. They'll tell us what the rent is. So if you ever call one of those places and say, how much is it to stay there? They'll tell you what the rent is, but they don't go into the details about the care costs usually. And that's usually where the numbers really start to skyrocket. So those are important numbers to know. But those are the standard outside of the assisted living rent costs. Those are the things that are usually included. In a board and care home, like I said, everything's included. Your room, your meals, all your getting back and forth to the bathroom. If you're incontinent, they'll take care of all of that. So they'll take care of pretty much anything and everything that you need help with. I have been able to find some good places for some very, very low dollars if we really look. I have called in a lot of favors with board and care homes because they want to continue to work with me. They'll be willing to take less money if they can afford to do it. So don't let the numbers really scare you too much. I mean, overall, they're not cheap, I know that, but I try to do my best to work with people to make sure that I can find you a solution. Truly, I do. So the VA money, I'm sure you all have had conversations about what VA provides. There's a benefit called aid in attendance that is used for in-home care or assisted living if you qualify for it, and a lot do. So that's helpful. Every little bit helps. Then the last thing I wanted just to mention is hospice. I get a lot of questions from people about, well, what does hospice do? Where can I take my loved one if they're on hospice? Well, there's no place that's a hospice place. You can't just pull up to the front door and say, you're hospice, here's my loved one. There isn't anything like that. So what happens is hospice is a service. If your doctor deems that hospice is necessary for you or your loved one, then that service comes to wherever you are. And they provide a minimal amount of care. It's only a couple of times a week do they come. They provide help with showers and support, mental support. They help with medication management. They cover some of the costs like the incontinent products and medications. But wherever you are or your loved one is that's on hospice, that's where hospice comes. And there's a lot of companies out here that are hospice companies. So my recommendation always is if that's ever a question about do we need hospice, you talk with the doctor and ask them what they say. They're the expert. They're the ones who know. So that's pretty much it. That's all I know. Questions?
How do you evaluate board and care plans? I mean, are they licensed or?
Good question. So, like I say, there's 100 of them out here. That's a lot. Nobody would even know it's in your neighborhood for the most part, unless you're really in tune with your neighborhood. They're just houses. They don't have a big sign on the front. So every one of the board and cares that's licensed are the only ones that I ever work with. And so the state of California has a website that I visit often, and I do my due diligence just to make sure that each one of these communities is still following the rules. They have people, now that COVID is over, they have people that go out and actually visit, that are inspectors, to visit these places to be sure that all of the boxes are ticked of the things they're supposed to be doing. And so anything that's a violation gets posted on that website. So it's up to me to review them, and if it's serious, that is not a place I ever will take somebody again. If it's not serious, and no one's perfect. There's dings. Sometimes maybe they hate to say it, but if they're doing laundry and they've got the bleach out and they went and ran to do something else with somebody and the licensing people came and there's the bleach out, not locked up. That's the kind of thing they'll write up because you never know who's going to grab that bleach and drink it. So, but to me, that's not a vicious violation of any sort. That was human, error. So I have to kind of decide what I think personally, what's acceptable in my world to share with my families that I work with. So that, and then just word of mouth. You know, I have good relationships with at least 2 of the other companies out here that do what I do. And we all compare notes. And we do not take people someplace that if one place has done something bad to somebody, then I'm not taking them there. So I appreciate that from my, competitors that are friendly with me. There's a few of us out here that have been doing this for a long time. So, we trust each other. Did that answer your question? Okay.
These various places, do they demand a contract from you for a certain period of time?
Good question. Every one of these communities has to abide by the agreement that the state of California has put into place with all the boilerplate rules and regulations. So every one of them does a month to month. Every one of them. Never ever sign anything that says that it's a long term. So a month to month, but the little thing there is that you have to give a 30-day notice if you want to ever leave. So if you move in and say, I'm not happy, I hate it here, this is horrible, you have to give them a 30-day notice. Now you don't have to stay that whole 30 days, but you have to pay for that whole 30 days. So, but that's the rule of California, so there is no long term at all.
Okay, following up on that, how are these places routinely paid? Do they take over like your Social Security, pension? Do they assume a deed to your property?
None of their business. You pay them like you're paying rent for an apartment. You write, your Social Security goes into your bank account, your veterans money goes into your bank account, your long-term care insurance money goes into your bank account. They send you an invoice at the place. This is how much, and you pay them, you write a check and pay them. Yeah, so they don't have anything to do with your personal business. In fact, there's no credit checks, there's nothing. They take everybody on their word that they're going to pay their bill. If they don't, you get an eviction notice. But, you hope you never have that happen, of course, but there's not any credit checks or anything like that. Yeah.
A friend asked me to ask you, are there any places that offer short-term arrangements or occasional daily?
That's really a good question that I always forget to talk about, respite stay. Respite stays are, yes, that's a big yes, there are places. So there's a couple communities here in the valley that will do respite on a very short time frame, like an overnight or a 3-day, long weekend. The majority of the big places are the ones that usually we go to for respite because they have more availability, so there's more opportunities to have a spot. But many of them are 2-week minimums, that you have to stay 2 weeks, and if it's a respite stay, it's a per day price. So if their monthly price is, let's say, $4,500, and you're going to do a respite for 2 weeks, it's going to be like about $200 a day. So it's not cheap, but if you need a break, you're going out of town or something, it's a good option. All of the things that you have to do to place your loved one, like a doctor's report has to be completed, TB test has to be done, and in this day and age, you have to prove that you've either been vaccinated or that you are clear of COVID. Those all have to be done for respite, just like the long-term stays. So it's all the same stuff as far as they're concerned, as far as paperwork goes. A board and care home will do respite for you, but when you're talking about 6 beds and you want to plan a month out, odds are there's not going to be a spot open at the house that you chose. Because, to be honest with you, they make no money off of respite, and they would rather have a long-term resident than take somebody for a weekend. It is, unfortunate, but it's how that works.
I have my husband in a couple of days a week in daycare, mystical.
They're one of the ones that does however many days you need.
And that was the thing, just in case something happens to me, we have no kids here or anything.
Yeah.
So now I know if something happens, I can just go with it.
It's a good backup plan, for sure. Vista Cove, yeah.
So now he was just saying that they have a separate daycare program?
They do.
Well, I guess because of COVID, I don't know if that's being...
I think that was kind of on hold during COVID because they didn't want Okay, so they actually,
They're open now because
do-
we're gonna go see them on
okay.
Monday.
and I knew they were right on the edge of that. In fact, I was going over today to do a tour for a family, and I was going to ask that very question, so that's good.
Yeah, we're gonna go Monday.
Okay. One of the nice things I think about, I don't want to push any community. That's not what I'm about. As you see, the name of my company, Senior Living Options. I want to be sure everybody has options. But Vista Cove has their daycare. They do it 7 days a week, which is nice because other daycares in the valley usually are only, 5.
Monday to Friday.
Yeah, exactly. And they'll do that respite for just a couple of days, which makes a world of difference for families.
We went there last Saturday, so that
Wonderful.
that was good.
Good, yeah. That's usually my go-to for that situation.
Do you help your clients find respite if they need?
I do,
You do
yeah.
that too?
You bet I do.
And then I had another question, and that is, if you were helping someone find a location and you felt there were 3 suitable,
Mhm.
how do you advise them to make the decision? Do they go and visit and
Yeah.
stay?
So I wasn't going to get into a lot of details about my job specifically, but that is what I do. If I find, I want to give you as many options as are out there that fit your criteria. So I usually will put you in the car and take you to go look at all of them and make sure
what would you be telling me to look for?
Well, we'll ask questions, and that's what I try to do to make sure that we understand, well, what's their policy on doctor's visits? What's their policy on families coming to visit? How do you handle this? What do you do with that? And, because you can't think of all those questions. I know what those important questions usually are. So we go through all 3, but I'm not going to help you make the decision. That's got to be your decision. I mean, I can give you my input. I'll be happy to do that, but I can't make the decision for you.
So somehow matching your loved one to
Yeah.
the right environment.
Because you
just
feel
goes
it
back to-
sometimes. When you walk in the front door, you feel it and say, oh, wow, I like it here. And then some are like, oh no, this is horrible. I don't want to go there. And sometimes you don't get it at the first 3 visits. Sometimes you have to go out and do it 2 or 3 times. And I'm happy to take whatever time you need to do that.
Yeah.
And my services are free, so why not use my help for that?
Or possibly you could do a respite at one of them
Uh-huh.
and see how that went. for-
You can, but I gotta say, in my experience of all these years, it's hard to make an adjustment in just a few days. And usually the person that's there says, I don't want to be here, I hate it here, they're not feeding me there. There's a lot of reasons why they don't want to be there. So don't necessarily think that's a good way to make that decision. For some people it is. It's not everybody has that story, but. So, anyone else? Question?
And how do you get paid for your services?
Good question about that too. So I have agreements with pretty much all the places out here that are doing the job correctly. And my agreement says to them that if I bring them a client, a family, and that person moves in, they pay me a one-time referral fee, one time, like a real estate agent. Yeah. And my goal is never to, because I have basically the same percentage with every place, so my goal is not to pick places that are going to pay me more money. That's not what it's about for me. That's why I've been in the Valley and I have such a good reputation, because it's not about that. I have bills, I have to pay my bills, but I want to be sure that I've made a good placement, and that's important. So, and that's pretty much how all the companies that do what I do, that's how they do it too. So it's kind of standard in our industry.
I used a service similar to what you have, and I think it's wonderful.
Uh-huh.
But they wanted $5,400 from me to find.
I know who that is. That's wrong. Was it 2 gentlemen? May I just ask that?
There was a gentleman and a woman, but
Okay.
I ended up not using
Good.
it. I can't afford $5,400 for.
That is so wrong. I think it's against the law, actually. I have to say, when I came from the industry of being a financial advisor, compliance is all over you. I mean, there are so many rules and regulations, and you can't hardly do anything without documenting and making sure that the client or your, customer never gets abused. In my industry, it's so different. There are no governing bodies over people that do what I do. And there are some out here that are just doing stuff like that, and it just puts a bad name on all of us. And the best thing that could ever happen to my industry of placement is that we have to get licensed. And we have to follow certain rules and regulations that the state's mandated. Now, somebody's got to govern that, but or police it, but still, I think it would cut out a lot of those people that are just doing this out of their trunk. It's sad. I'm glad you didn't pay that money.
Oh,
that is not right.
Not for that.
Yeah. And I don't want to bash the large internet company that does what I do. And I think we all know who they are, Joan London. But they don't have a clue what's going on local. They send a list out to people and they've never been to any of these communities. They don't know. You gotta be sure that you know what you're doing. And I would never recommend a place that I'd never been to. I would never recommend a place that I don't know what their background is. It's just wrong.
Desires to have their loved one in-house
Uh-huh.
with them.
Uh-huh.
Do you have a list of caretakers that you could be reliable?
I only work with companies that have gone through all the process of making sure that they're cleared with the Department of Justice, and because I don't know personal caregivers and I don't want to know them because I can't recommend that they're going to do a good job and be safe. I have a list of a few that I would be happy to recommend that are companies. Yeah.
And those companies place their clients in the home subject to whatever arrangements they have with their client.
They would come in to the home to do the caregiving that you need. They would have caregivers that come to their home, to your home, to do the care.
Do you know the range of payment?
Well, I think I'm out of touch. Where does it kind of start?
So how it works is, like Leann would call a caregiving company that she works with, that she knows is licensed with the state, etc. And then they would get in touch with you and work out the logistics. How many hours you need, what's the best time for somebody to come, all of those things. And then they'll send somebody that you could meet and get to know and see if that person is a fit with both you and whoever the person receiving the care is, and then you would start that relationship
So
from
the
there.
background check is the obligation of the
Well,
company.
The company.
work with a company that has an HCO number. If they have an HCO number, that means that they are licensed with the state of California. Their caregivers are insured, bonded, Department of Justice background check, and FBI background check. And all of those things are very important because if something goes wrong, then you call up whatever company that is and they say, no problem, we'll take care of it. If it's not one of those companies, they can say, well, I'm sorry, you better call the caregiver and see if they have insurance.
Yeah.
And so then it's up to you. And by the way, you're also the employer. Whereas a company that has an HCO number, you're paying the company, not the caregiver. They're paying the caregiver, so you are not the employer. Those are important things. But that's a whole different subject.
That is.
But the main thing is you can see how valuable it is to have somebody like Leann, a company that does the homework for you. So you can make a phone call and you can talk about budget, your care needs, all of the different things that are pertinent to your information. And she knows about it because she's visited all of the places that are available in the valley. And I think that's really important. And as an in-home care company, Leann has been a valuable resource to us since the day you walked into the community. And we've known her and relied on her ever since. So she does a fantastic job, and her service, I think, speaks for itself, right? How many of us have the time and even know what kind of questions to ask at a facility, right? Where Leann can, pretty much weed out all of the things that need to be taken care of. So it's really, really a very worthwhile business, and we thank you for your
Thank you.
service to the community.
You're very
You do a
welcome.
very, very good job, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Dom, and I want to say this, of all the careers I've had in my life, this is the best thing I've ever done. I get choked up every time I talk about it, but this
Yeah.
is the best thing I have ever done in my life. To give someone a solution to a problem that they never thought that there was ever going to be a solution to, and kind of help guide them through it, it feels so good. You know, you get personal satisfaction out of that stuff too, but it's important to me. It really, truly is, so.
So what's the time to talk to you how do you know when it's time that you can't handle at-home care?
Well, it's different for everybody, you know, and so I always advise that it isn't a bad idea to kind of get the ball kind of at least going down the road the right direction, to go look at a few places. I take the time with you, I don't mind that at all, to look so you can kind of just know, oh, that's what those places are all about, that's what they look like. And then that way, so if there's a crisis or something happens, very dramatically changes in your world as a caregiver, you at least have some kind of a plan. And so, but everybody has a different trigger, you know, nobody says to me the same thing about what their trigger is to make it finally go that direction.
Do you size up the patient to know?
I can, but I go based on a lot of what you say. Yeah, because you're the one that's with them 24/7, and you know, they don't, their reality sometimes is not really what it is, so. Yeah, I go based on what you say. I mean, I'd like to see where someone lives, just so I can kind of make a match that, you know, you don't want to, if you have a fabulous, big, monstrous house, and then I find this little bitty place that's, you know, not anywhere close to his lifestyle, and that's probably not a good idea. So it's helpful for me to kind of get as much info as possible, but I can do it without that too. Yeah.
Leann, what's the average for in-home care by the month?
By the month? Well, are you talking 24/7?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I don't know. You know?
Probably around $18,000 to $20,000 a month.
What?
It's pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And that's why there's that decision of what needs to be made. If you need 24/7 care at home, and you don't have that budget, then maybe moving into an assisted living or a board and care home is really the direction you might want to try to go. But I think, you know, bits and pieces, have somebody come in a couple of days a week to help with stuff. And then if you need more than that, then that's when you have to start going down that road of thinking about when is the right time to place somebody. That's just kind of a rule of thumb. But it is expensive to have somebody 24/7. And if I'm not mistaken, you're not going to have the same person, you know, that whole time. You're going to have shifts because they only can work 8, 12 hours, something like
Yeah,
that.
and the laws have changed, so there's no live-in. Used to be a caregiver could live in, and it was extremely, you know, half as much. But now with the state of California, everything has to be hourly. So it has to be 2 12-hour shifts at whatever the hourly rate is. And there's no, you know, there's no variance. That's just the way it is. So that's how it gets rather expensive. And there is, of course, overtime now. So that has to be paid too. So that's why it gets so expensive. My recommendation for in-home care is be very specific as to when it's beneficial for the caregiver to be there.
Yeah.
Maybe nights are your problem, or maybe getting somebody up and ready for the day is your problem, or showering. But whatever the specific needs are, if you're in tune to what they are and you know, analyze where you really need the care, there's a great deal of money that can be saved. And many times you don't need 24/7 care.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Leann, are there options if a couple wants to go somewhere together?
Yes, there are. So in many circumstances, if one person has dementia and the other one doesn't, a lot of cases, if they wanted to go into assisted living, the person with dementia would be in the memory care part of the building, and the person without would be in the assisted living side. Now you're paying for 2 apartments. You could live, if you didn't have dementia, you could live in memory care with your loved one. And, you know, it's more expensive to do it that way because you're gonna have to pay whatever the memory care prices are to live there too. But many communities will let you do that. And then what some families do is, you know, the one loved one lives in assisted living, the other's in memory care. The person that has dementia comes over to assisted living all day long and spends the day with the person that doesn't have dementia, but has to go back at night to sleep in the memory care. It depends on how far along someone is in the disease. There's a whole lot of things that need to be considered, but it can happen. And in a board and care home, it can definitely happen. Two people can have the master bedroom and live together, and you know, the person that doesn't have dementia can come and go as they please, and it's a little bit easier and it's less expensive certainly, but it's possible. And some people like to do that. I've placed people like that before.
Well, I've had experience in this area of senior living, and but I'm from the state of Illinois. So my question is, there is a huge chasm here that I'm shocked at, and that's the board and care. Our skilled nursing back home was a spot where a person could live at a higher level and pay $78,000, let's say, a month. When you put that in perspective to $18,000 to $20,000 to have a live-in caregiver 24/7, it isn't so radical. So let me tell you the other situation that I have a question about. Continuing care retirement communities, do you have them in California? And if so, are there some here where the option would be independent living and memory care?
The only one that even comes close to being in that category is Bayshire, which used to be Brookdale. You know very well.
Yeah, they just came in here and took over.
Okay, yeah, they did.
Okay.
They have a skilled nursing, they have a memory care, they have assisted living, which doubles as their independent living. There's something about there, and this question just came up to me recently because they're the only one here in the valley that can take it from there to there. And there's something about it that causes them not to be really viable. Oh, I know. I know what it is. When you do that, you have to pay like a large sum of money at the very beginning.
Like an ownership?
Like an ownership
Yeah.
to take you from here to here to here to here, and you'll be guaranteed you'll never be without care. They don't do that. They're a month to month.
I see.
So they don't qualify for that reason, and they're the only one in the valley. There's two places in our valley that do a ownership, a buy-in, Segovia. Well, they don't have memory care and they don't have skilled nursing.
Okay.
Carlotta, Fountains of Carlotta,
Yeah.
they don't do memory care.
Wow.
So there's not really anybody that has every piece of that puzzle, unfortunately, in the valley. California has them,
All right.
but they're out of the valley. And I must say I am not familiar with them because I don't ever get that question. This just came up to me like last week.
It is the way my mother lived.
Yeah.
You know,
Other states
and
do it.
I mean, you know, to put it that, but,
Yeah.
you know, if there was a trade, you would, in those days, so
Yes.
that would be 80s, 90s, you would purchase an apartment, one bedroom, two bedroom.
Yeah.
Mom was a widow, went with the one bedroom. At some point, they call it a scholarship, but at some point when her funds ran out, she went on scholarship. And what that was, they took her Social Security.
Yeah.
And then because it was a not-for-profit foundation, et cetera, they took care of her until she died.
Right.
But she was in that long-term setup where when she went from independent, we never did the assistant because she was great. And at 91, you know, she died in care hospice. There's some good things in Illinois, you know?
Yeah, a lot of states have a lot of those kinds of setups.
That's not available in California, I couldn't.
It is in California, but not in our desert. And I don't even know where the closest one is. I could do some research
With
on
all our
this.
retired people, wouldn't you
I
think?
know. It's amazing to me. You know, and we're kind of losing ground too, with the baby boomers starting to hit the market. We're not going to have near as many locations for people as we should.
And we'll continue to take questions if you like. I just want to, for the sake of our viewing audience, we'll wrap it up. But
Okay.
I wanted to thank Leann for being here, and we're going to continue to take questions, so don't go anywhere. But thank you so much, Leann.
You're
for joining
welcome.
us today. We have all the brochures. We have names of places here. We have lists of places. I've printed up some things for you to take home with you. So, again, if you have any questions, Leann's got her cards here. I have Leann's number as well as the other ladies that she knows in the Valley. Please feel free to give us a call here at ACV. Monday through Friday, 8 to noon, or leave a message. And 760-776-3100. Thank you very much.
Thank you.